Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 4-game Major League Baseball slate for the main slate. This video will also cover the night slate. I will do the main slate first, then cover the night slate afterwards. Before I get started, though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, check out the link below in the description for Patreon. I made the Patreon write-up today for free, so you can check out all the picks there and what I think about each one. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this one. My core plays here for the main slate are Francisco Alvarez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Corbin Carroll. The night slate is Spencer Steer, Jose Altuve, and Yoshida. So let's go ahead and get into our slate here for the main. We're going to start with our pitchers, and we're going to look at two P1 options. First being Kevin Gausman, who draws a really favorable matchup here. He's only had three games all season under 24 fantasy points, and only 2 under 17 fantasy points. This matchup isn't perfect, but he definitely draws the safest upside on the slate. He's giving up only 5 earned runs the last 4 starts, and has at least 8 strikeouts in 3 of those 4 starts, so I think he's a really good option on the slate, though he is fairly expensive. Then we'll look at Max Scherzer, who's actually a P1 or a P2 option today due to his price. The matchup isn't ideal here versus Philly, but he has started the season kind of rough, but his last 3 starts have been over 20 fantasy points, and when he's on, he's not been very hittable. The K rate is pretty good right now as well, so I do think he's very viable here, and he's pretty inexpensive compared to what he normally can be. Then we're going to look at 2 P2 options, one being Jesus Luzardo for Miami. He's been giving up earned runs in every game this season, but he draws an okay situation here. I do not hate right-handers versus him. San Diego is a tough team to pitch against, so he does feel a little contrarian today, but he is a good option as a P2 option. And then we'll look at Joe Musgrave for San Diego. He's not made it past 5 innings except one time in 6 starts, but he does have some potential here. The matchup has some upside, but he hasn't had more than 6 strikeouts in any of the games this season. The matchup just isn't awful, and that gives him some utility, but he does feel risky today. He's a P2 contrarian play at best. I do think it's probably best to do a duo of Gausman, Luzardo, or Scherzer today, and just kind of mix and match them as you please. Those are the safest options on the slate. Moving into our catchers, Francisco Alvarez is the top option here for the Mets. He draws some really good metrics here. He has hit the ball really well so far this season with home run potential. I do like his upside here, and he's cheap, and that gives him a nice potential here. Diaz for Colorado here, also in play, as he's hit the ball really well. If he draws a start, he's definitely in play here with home run potential, though he is better at home than he is on the road. He still draws some good potential here and a good matchup. And then Kirk for Toronto, he is a Hail Mary kind of play today. He is not hit home runs this season like we expected, but he should be the de facto catcher right now with the injuries there. So I do think he's got some viable potential here, though he does seem somewhat risky at this position. Moving on to first base, we'll start with Vlad Jr., who has not hit the ball well lately, despite being good throughout the season. He's been very streaky, and he's in a slump, but he does have an occasional blow-up game, and the metrics here for this matchup definitely give him potential, so I do think he's a great option. Pete Alonso is a good contrarian option, as he's hit the ball really well, but not quite as good as Vlad, but he's been good lately, and that's improving his home run potential as well. He's also hitting more home runs than just about anybody. He's got 20 already. He's got great metrics for this game, and I like him as a contrarian play. And as a value play, if Brandon Belt was to draw the start, he would definitely be somebody that's interesting, especially considering he's scoring about as much fantasy points as Vlad Jr. has lately, and so that draws him some utility here. You could also consider Daniel Vogelbach if he draws a start, but he feels really risky as well. Moving into second base, we really just don't have a lot at this position to like here, but Jeff McNeil draws my favorite option. He has been pretty solid so far this season. He's not really a home run hitter, but this position is super weak, and he's pretty inexpensive, and he's definitely a guy that you can fit in your lineup today. Ketel Marte is an expensive option, He is viable here as he has hit the ball really well, and he's hitting the ball really well lately, having a lot of really good games, really good success recently. The metrics are not super ideal though here, so he is risky but has some utility. Then we're going to look at third base here for this slate, and it's another position that does feel pretty weak, especially with Machado out. Ryan McMahon draws a really good opportunity here to have a good game. He had a good game in his first game here against Arizona, and he did get a hit in one of the other games as well. He's hit Arizona pretty well despite being on the road. He definitely draws some utility here, though his price doesn't make him ideal. And then for a value play here is Kim from San Diego. He's right-handed, and I like the right-handed hitters against Miami today. The metrics are okay. They're not great, but this position is very limited, and so he definitely draws some viability with his ability to score fantasy points. That's what I have really for third base. Moving on to shortstop, we have three guys to consider here. Bo Bichette, he has hit the ball extremely well so far this season, and I like his potential here and upside. He's had a couple of home runs the last few games as well, so he definitely has some good metrics. Then we're going to look at Royce Lewis here. Where'd he go? Sorry, not Royce Lewis. What am I doing? Francisco Lindor. I'm sorry. For the Mets. Now, he is high risk, high reward with the batting average, but the metrics do feel a little bit better than Bichette does, and he's a little bit less expensive, and he has just as much home run potential. He's been hitting home runs the last few games as well at a high rate. Then we'll look at Perdomo for Arizona. He has also hit the ball really solidly so far this season. The home run potential is also there in this matchup. He does feel a little Hail Mary-ish like, as he is kind of a home run or bust kind of player lately, but he definitely has the potential to do that today. Moving into the outfield, we're going to start with Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who just draws incredible metrics for this matchup. He's hitting the ball extremely well, also with the 300 batting average. He has home run potential here, and I love the matchup and love his start, though he does feel really chalky. Tatis Jr. is also in play here, though he does have some utility. He does feel a little riskier than sometimes, but because of his price especially, but he is a top-tier play. Corbin Carroll is also in play, though his batting average isn't quite as good as some of the other guys. He's hitting the ball really well lately. He's got home run potential, and he's drawing a fantastic matchup. Then we'll look at Nemo for the Mets, who also has some very interesting matchup metrics. He's not a home run hitter most of the time, but he does get on base, and he does manage to score fantasy points in different ways. Marte is also in play for the Mets. I really do like the Mets in this matchup here. He draws some unique metrics, and he has home run potential here, despite the fact that he hasn't hit many home runs this season. He is hitting the ball pretty well. Then we'll look at Pavin Smith for Arizona. He draws some unique opportunity here as a Hail Mary play. He's had 2 straight 20 fantasy point games, but he's really just a home runner best guy. So he definitely feels a little bit unappealing from that perspective, except for if you think he'll hit a home run. And then Jake McCarthy, who's only played in a handful of games so far this season. He's actually managed to score fantasy points despite not getting home runs, mostly because he's getting stolen bases when he gets on. But the issue is that he's having somewhat of a trouble getting on base with this 198 batting average. But that said, if he can get a steal or two, he definitely plays off here, and he's had some really big games lately as a result. So that's what I have for the main slate. Let's move into the later slate, which is a 3-game slate that starts at 7 o'clock. And this is the 9-minute point of the video, and so I do wanted to point that out here. We're going to start with our core plays being Steer, Altuve, and Yoshida, but let's go and get into our pitchers here for this night slate. This night slate features 1 very good P1 option and 3 average value plays. First, our top tier option is Valdez. Now, he is facing the Angels, and some of the Angels hitters have been hitting the ball well, but I do think he has 40 fantasy point upside. He's the only guy on the slate that does. He's only had a couple games under 20 fantasy points on the season. He's also got a good K rate, and he also has a high floor as well, so I think he's a viable option. Tanner Bibby is up and down the season. He is a P2 option. He feels risky, almost a Hail Mary-like here. He's only had 3 good games and 3 bad games this season in his 6 starts, and most of that has been tied to his Ks. Now, I will add that Minnesota is one of the K-heaviest K-friendly teams on the slate, and that definitely gives him some utility here, and he's relatively inexpensive. Then we'll look at Chris Sale. He is probably my favorite P2 option. He did start the season kind of rough, but in the last 5 games, he's had 4 really solid games and over 20 fantasy points, and he's had 4 wins and 4 quality starts. The K rate has been all over the place, but he does have 10K potential in this particular matchup as well against Cincinnati, and he definitely has some utility here, though this is a bit of a hitter's park, so it is a little bit of an issue. Then Pablo Lopez. The K rate is good enough here to consider him, but he hasn't been as crisp as he started the season. And Cleveland is a low K rate team. His K rate does make him viable, but he is riskier than some of the other options. Moving into our catchers, here we're going to start with Tyler Stevenson. Now he draws some utility here, though he is a little bit expensive compared to everybody else. He doesn't have the home run potential that we hoped he would have this season, but he does have good metrics, and he feels pretty safe for this particular slate. And then Colton Wong, if he draws a start today, he's hitting the ball pretty well lately. He's got some utility here, and he's got some nice metrics. For this one, there's really not a whole lot to like at this position today on this particular slate. Maybe at first base, we're going to look at Spencer Steer first. Now, he is a core play for me. He's just too cheap, and he's been absolutely mashing the ball lately. I believe he's had 8 games in the last 10 over 10 fantasy points. That gives him some great metrics and great utility here. But if you want to go contrarian here, you could go with Abreu for Houston. He hasn't hit the ball well this season, but he does have home run metrics in this one, and the matchup is solid. He's just not been a good hitter this season, so, and hopefully he can get going at some point, but right now he's kind of risky. Then Justin Turner is also in play. Now, the metrics aren't quite as good as they were today, but they are good, and he definitely draws some utility, but there's good options at the 2 positions he can play at first base and third base, so he's no longer a must-start today, but he's definitely in play. Moving to second base, Altuve is the obvious core play here. He has hit the ball really solidly since he's been back, though he hasn't had too many bad games, and so I really like his matchup, and he definitely makes the Houston Astros lineup a lot better, as they've been pretty suspect so far this season. Polanco, though, if he draws the start today, it looks like he'll be activated. He would be in play today, though he is somewhat risky, but he's a contrarian play off of Altuve. And then Valdez for Boston is in play, as he's hit the ball pretty decently lately. He had a home run yesterday, and he draws good metrics again, though he is a boomer bust play on this particular slate. Moving into third base, we will start with Rafael Devers. Now, he has some really good metrics here, and this is about the best situation he's been in a little while. He's got home run potential here against Green, who does have a tendency to give up home runs, and I do like his upside and metrics for this matchup. Bregman is a good alternative here to him at a little bit cheaper price, and he draws some great metrics and has nice utility. Royce Lewis is also in play here as a contrarian option, as a Hail Mary kind of value play, as he's only played 2 games, but they've been okay so far. So as long as he, is hitting the ball and has good metrics, he's definitely in play here. Justin Turner can also play this position. Moving into the shortstops, we're going to start with Matt McLain, who has just hit the ball really well so far as a starter, and I really like his upside here. He's hit RBI potential, he's got stolen base potential, and he's hitting the ball decently, so I do like his potential in this particular one overall. Royce Lewis can also play here, and then if you want to pay up a little bit, Jeremy Pena is available at this position with good metrics. Not great metrics, but good ones, and he's hitting the ball pretty well the last few games, so I like his potential here. Moving into the outfielders, this is a little bit rougher position for this particular slate, as there's not a ton of value, but there are some upside expensive plays, and Yordan Alvarez is one of them. He's hitting the ball extremely well and has home run potential here, though he does tend to have big games and not so many, average games. Trout and Ohtani are in play today, but they are very high risk, high reward today, so I just wanted to mention them. Yoshida is a core play here for me, as he's hit the ball extremely well to start his career here, and he has really good metrics for this one. He's had some really good games lately, and he draws another incredible matchup situation. Verdugo also in play with home run potential. He's price is a little high for what I'd like, but he definitely has some utility here. Gallo is also in play as a value play. He's hit the ball pretty terribly all season long, but he is a boomer bust home run play. The metrics are good, but obviously he's not scoring a ton of fantasy points when he doesn't hit a home run. But he's cheap enough now to be viable here. And then I have two other, kind of plays and Corey Jukes. If he plays for Houston, he's played decently well when he draws a start, but you do want to make sure he draws a start, and his metrics look like make him a good value play. And then Jake Myers, for Houston, if he does draw a start, he definitely has some utility, though he is, as he's had some home runs the last few games. I like his potential here, but he is another boomer bust play. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.